Welcome to On the Other Hand, and a special welcome to Matt Madman, Michael Move, with all due respect, Nicholas Simmons, Dylan, and any other new viewers. So I've listened to NPR for quite a while. I like to turn it on when commuting to work just to get an overview of major news, and for a while, I was pretty content thinking NPR did down-the-center news reporting. But as the 2020 election has gotten more heated, I've lost faith in that unbiased picture of NPR I had in my head. So let me walk you through the red flags I've seen recently. So back when the riots were in full swing, NPR interviewed an author who had written about looting. Now, I expect and appreciate the news sources will reach out to interview those with different or interesting takes on a given subject. But they published an article titled, "One Author's Argument in Defense of Looting." Gratefully, we have the Wayback Machine to show the original article, because after it was published, there was some backlash and NPR changed the article to "One Author's Controversial View in Defense of Looting." Now, making changes to articles is okay and mistakes happen, but I have some other examples I want to show. If we move on to October, NPR put out an article titled, "Unfettered Free Speech is a Threat to Democracy, Journalist Says." Yes, a journalist who makes their living using free speech is literally arguing that free speech is a threat to democracy. And NPR hasn't walked this one back, which is mind-boggling to me. But just because NPR has a couple of controversial takes, that doesn't mean they've lost trust, right? To answer, I'd like to show a couple more examples. In the beginning of August, NPR reported on an explosive report from The Atlantic's Jeffrey Goldberg that asserts that the president privately disparaged service members, and even called fallen service members, quote, "losers and suckers." They follow this up with the statement that, "Now we want to mention that NPR has not independently verified these stories, which relied on unnamed sources. But we still feel that the president's relationship to the military does bear scrutiny as he makes his case for re-election." I agree the President of the United States of America should be held to a very high standard, and if he did say what was alleged, he should be condemned. However, NPR admits that they have not verified the story and can't authenticate the sources or evidence. Remember that. Later in that same month, NPR reported on the New York Times' story about Trump's alleged tax situation. Again in this story, NPR says that NPR has not confirmed any of the details from the Times reporting. The newspaper doesn't post any of its source documents. Again, if there are bad things that the president has done, he should be condemned for it. But also, NPR is reporting on unverified sources disparaging the president in a run-up to an election. I would be okay with this kind of standard NPR has established, but it isn't applied equally. Because recently, the New York Post published files from a laptop owned by Joe Biden's son that, if true, would mean that Joe Biden has been illegally taking money from foreign sources. And what does NPR publish about this? Nothing. In fact, NPR literally says that it would be a waste of readers' time to cover the story. To go into more depth, the full quote from NPR's newsletter reads as follows. "There are many, many red flags in that New York Post investigation. Intelligence officials warned that Russia has been working overtime to keep the story of Hunter Biden in the spotlight. Even if Russia can't be positively connected to this information, the story of how Trump associates Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani came into a copy of the computer hard drive has not been verified and seems suspect. And if the story could be verified, the New York Post did no forensic work to convince consumers that the emails and photos that are the basis for their report have not been altered. But the biggest reason you haven't heard much on NPR about the Post story is the assertions don't amount to much. We don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories, and we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions. And quite frankly, that's where we ended up. This was a politically driven event, and we decided to treat it that way. NPR literally says the story looks like foreign disinformation, and even if it isn't, it hasn't been verified and seems suspect. And even if it was verified, the publisher didn't convince consumers it wasn't altered. Ultimately, NPR says this story is a politically driven event and as such doesn't deserve to be covered. To summarize, within a few months' time, NPR has published articles in defense of looting, attacking free speech, and covered several unverified stories that make Trump look bad, but NPR didn't criticize or verify these stories. However, potential evidence also came out that incriminates Biden, but NPR needs said evidence to be thoroughly vetted and considered it to be politically driven and a waste of time. To use the words of Joe Biden,
"You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier."
If NPR wants to have high standards for its reporting, I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with a taxpayer-funded news station having blatantly political double standards. As always, thanks, hope you enjoyed. And if you did, consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you'll get notified for new uploads.